Unemployment is predicting a property drop. Let's have a look. Hello everyone, Florian.Heise here, and welcome to another episode of HeiseSays. I had my morning stein of coffee, and I thought we would continue our journey into this, shall we say, bipolar world of property bulls, where one day they're saying property is perfect, now is the time to buy. You'll only take a 20% cut, but don't worry, it's still now the time to buy. Unemployment is skyrocketing, but it's still time to buy. Now we're going again. Job losses continue to increase, signaling a hit to house prices. And you've got other articles saying the exact opposite. Now, I think it's important just to catalogue this and to talk about it, seeing it going from one extreme to the other over and over again. Sure, it's entertaining, but also, I hope, in a way, it'll build a little bit of immunity to all of us, that perhaps we shouldn't put so much stock in the articles coming from Domain or from the mainstream media regarding property, particularly from the unnamed experts, when we just look at some of the fundamentals. Now, I know some people in the comments are saying housing, it's never going to crash in Australia. It'll only be, people will just hold on to it and it'll be a 5% hit. Now, that sounds quite reasonable, honestly, based on the lived experiences most people have had in Australia, in our market, because people could hold on to it even if there was a cut. Because, well, if you still have your job, if you can still make your repayments, you hold on to it. You don't sell if you have to. I have a house across the road from my house right now, what I'm standing in, that went to auction. Auction fell through. Nothing happened. It was never reported on any websites. And then it's been sitting there for sale. And the rumor in the street is that the buyer, the investor, doesn't want to sell below their purchase price. Now, that may be a viable strategy when you can afford it. But if unemployment keeps growing up, more people are having difficulties, more people are under mortgage stress and pressure. Martin North, in his recent videos, predicted that when the 6 months period will end of banks being our buddies, the number of people that are going to be under mortgage stress will increase. They give us, say, 40%, over 40%. That's a lot of people. We have a look here at some arrears figures that were published from the RBA. There's been an increase from 2017, 18 to 19, but as a percentage of the number of loans, it's still rather low. So, in some ways, with the combination of job seeker, the bank holidays, people can use that strategy of hodling, just holding. But the thing is, when all those things go away, will they still be able to hold to that strategy? There'll be people that will start to crack. And the problem is it may snowball when confidence then breaks. If all of a sudden your property that you've lost 10% on, then you suddenly lose 15%. Then the market starts talking more and more about a property crash. It starts going lower and lower and lower. And then there's another rent strike. We'll have to see. So the premise here, guys, and the reason why I keep talking about it is because, well, a large portion of our wealth in Australia is tied up in our housing, in our property. Either directly owned, investor owned, or through super funds. Now, most of these houses, they're perfectly fine, normal spec homes. And for most people, these are all we need. They're fine. Honestly, I think some of them are a bit too big. People pay too much for storage space they don't use. I mean, these things are terrible. There's no backyard. I mean, look at that. The images here are just atrocious. No backyard at all. Which, as an architect and a dad, I'm not a fan of. I'd rather have a place with a little bit of dirt to play in. I mean, what are these? 450 blocks? 400 blocks? Even 300 blocks? They look it, don't they? But nevertheless, they're all pretty cookie cutter and standard. So when we get reports of property prices, shooting up or shooting down, a lot of those are in the more luxurious end of the market. And I'll bring up this chart here, which I've shown a few times. It's a great demonstration of non-uniform growth. This is unit price growth, and you can see all the green suburbs where it's gone up, some of the more ritzy ones, and the red and dark red where it's gone down, where people investing in the units haven't received the growth. So it's not uniform. So now when they're saying that job losses continue to increase, signaling a hit to house prices, I would argue probably job losses and so unemployment and underemployment. And for those of you that aren't aware, there's ABS, the Australian Bureau of Statistics. They monitor our unemployment rate. And the data comes out. They have a particular methodology which involves surveying people, and there's slight differences to how they do it, but they ring up, and if you don't meet specific criteria during the period that they surveyed, you're not counted as unemployed. Whereas an alternative, which is the Roy Morgan, and they're another organization, a private organization, does their own survey, has a slightly different methodology, so they come up with different figures. Now we'll look at the comparison, but right now let's jump down, and here's the unemployment rate. So unemployed or underemployed, this is the number here. This is the important number, because I would argue underemployed also can have an impact on mortgage stress. If you're only getting half the hours that you need, if you're normally earning $3,000 a week and you only get $1,500 because they can only afford to keep you on for the job keeper amount, that's going to make a dent. And you can bet there'll be people there that have taken on huge mortgages, because we're reading other articles where they're saying that $700,000 is a first home owner entry point. And I guess just because I'm in Brisbane, that seems ludicrous to me, utterly ludicrous. So we can see here the combined unemployment and underemployment rate is at 24.7. This has gone down from late March. So they have the ability to do multiple surveys a month, do it more efficiently. So it's gone down from late March, but still nearly at 25%, everyone. And that's not the population, that's the workforce. So the workforce includes those employed and those looking for work. That's the workforce. So either you're employed and you're looking for work, then you're part of the workforce. It also comes into the idea, another thing to be aware of is the participation rate. If you lose your job and you just say, no, I'm over it, give up, you're not counted in the workforce. So we might see that happening too, which is kind of sad actually. But, people usually, maybe they just need a break, to be honest, after a tough time. So 24.7, we have up here, the way they do it is, we've got unemployed and underemployed. So unemployed, they're saying it's at 15.3%, and underemployed is at 9.4%. So nearly 10% underemployed and 15.3% unemployed. Now we'll compare it, because remember, ABS are only saying we're about 5.2% unemployment. And they're predicting, all the banks are happy that they're saying, oh, it'll only hit 6%. It'll only hit 9% at the peak. Now we'll go here. This is the comparison. This is Roy Morgan. So total looking for work and workforce unemployed. Here's the ABS. This is the original trend percentage of unemployed, and this is seasonally adjusted. So they play with their figures. They do magic numbers. So we'll go down here and we'll have a look. So we don't have April data, we don't have late March data, we don't have early March data from ABS, but we have March data, all of it together. Roy Morgan's telling us 12.7% unemployed. ABS, 5.2 seasonally adjusted and 5.2 on the data. There you go. So you kind of double it. Let's have a look back here. 5%, 9.2, 5.5, 9.1, 5.7, 9.7. 6, 10.3, so nearly double. Some, it's a good, if you're lazy, and I tend to be, particularly in the morning, you just double it. Get an understanding of it. So these are the things that come together. Why I think it's important to keep an eye on all of this, and why jumping into the FOMO, the fear of missing out, that you'll start seeing, a lot of young people will start seeing, and they'll experience it. And I know I have, guys. All of us have made some stupid financial or investment decisions due to fear of missing out. That's just part of life, and that's just something you have to learn. And I wonder how many people only read the headlines, only hear what they hear in the news, only hear what their friends and family are saying. Property always goes up, Good as gold, guys. Get into property. How many YouTubers have you seen talking about their, property business, where they're helping people get into property? this guy's just flown up from Sydney and he's invested in this property and they're all like 21. They don't know what the recession is. Well, let's have a look at this article. And remember, they're talking about ABS numbers here. And just think, Roy Morgan's sitting at what, 15.3 right now for unemployment. So Australian jobs have taken a 7.5% hit since the first pandemic shutdowns began, new data has shown, pointing to lower consumer confidence and falling property prices, according to experts. And remember, we had other experts that are never named telling us later, I'm sure they're named later in the article, other experts telling us now's the time to buy in a previous piece. People aged 20 and under and 70 and over had the highest percentages of job losses between March 14 and April, with 18.5% and 13.9% respectively reporting job losses from the ABS data released on Tuesday. 20-somethings saw the next largest percentage of job losses at 10.3%, and those aged between 30 and 69 saw smaller drops in employment between 4.1 and 5.5. I mean, this is going to be a generational thing, isn't it, guys? Domain economist Trent Wiltshire said while the age brackets where people were most likely to buy a house, typically middle-aged, had a less dramatic rate of job losses than the older and younger cohorts, the numbers were still significant. A 5% fall in jobs is kind of a doubling of the unemployment rate among those people, which is the worst recession we've had for at least 30 years. And remember, everyone, these figures that we're seeing, they don't take account of JobKeeper. They don't take account of JobKeeper. What happens when JobKeeper when the tap gets turned off? Do you think the market, are we going to have this V-shaped recovery? If you're in business, if you own a cafe, are you planning to put all your team back on, or are you going to slowly power up again? Are people going to borrow to pay expenses? That's a very risky move in business if you're borrowing to pay expenses, if your cash flow isn't there. Will the cash flow for these businesses return? Because that's all it is, guys. Cash flow is king. So, yes, they're less affected. So they'll probably be more likely on the rebound to be more active in the housing market. But it's a big rise in unemployment and it's not finished yet. The data showed that in the week to April 18, 1.1% of people had lost their jobs compared to 0.3% the week before. The hardest hit industries overall were accommodation and food services, arts and recreation, with 33.4% and 27% of jobs lost respectively since mid-March. Every industry surveyed by the ABS reported some job losses, including healthcare and other essential services such as electricity, gas, water and waste. Now, it's interesting the discussions here with job losses. There's another article from the ABC, which is pretty much, women worst affected due to the job losses just because of the industries they work in. And you can, a typical ABC propaganda piece that I honestly, I didn't even want to bother doing a video on, because it's gotten to the point now where, you're going to have women working in more of these industries, probably because some of them want to work in accommodation or food services, arts and recreation, healthcare. They're going to hit it. That's just what it happens. Mr. Wiltshire said not only had people lost their jobs, but some were becoming underemployed. Among 40 to 49-year-olds, 4.2% had lost their jobs, but 8.2% saw a change in their wages. Now, this is the thing. I honestly think underemployment is going to have a bigger impact on this age group than the others, than the people potentially buying homes. It was similar with those in their 30s and 50s, where most people had seen a reduction in wages than had actually lost their jobs. Okay, so that's the JobKeeper we're seeing here. What do you think, guys? Do you think that's JobKeeper being reflected in the underemployment stats? Mr. Wiltshire said those in these age groups were more likely to be in salary jobs with enterprise bargaining and individual agreements, making it easier for their wages to be cut, compared to younger people who were more likely to be on award wages or be casuals, where it's not as easy to cut wages, he said. He said specific industries were also seeing wage drops at a higher rate than job losses, meaning that while people might still have their jobs, their certainty about the economy was likely to be low. If you look at financial and insurance services, job losses over that month are just 1%, but the wages drop off is just over 10%, he said. If people have lost a day of work a week, It's going to certainly limit their ability to pay off their mortgage or buy a new home. And we're starting to see this reflected in other elements of the economy, where we have retailers are opening, but consumer behavioral habits are starting to change. Less people are applying for loans and credit cards, which I think is generally encouraging. St. George Economics chief economist, Bessa Dida, said while house prices still rose across Australian capital cities in April, the full effect of job and wage losses had not been felt in the housing market. While housing, it's a slow-moving sector of the economy. It's going to take some time to flip a house. It's going to take some time when people get really desperate where they are going to start selling out. Because remember, Australia, you've got people here that have never seen a recession firsthand. That will affect their decisions. That might encourage some people to hold on a little bit longer, particularly, if you've lost your job, you've got a bank mortgage holiday, you've taken some money out of super just to pay off your mortgage, keep those payments going. This is the thing. If you got underemployed and you're in mortgage stress, that's going to take some time to filter through. We've got agents saying they might not see for sale, or the agents are telling prospective sellers to sell now, and this is anecdotally from things that were sent to me, to sell now because we might have forced sales in 6 months. So, she said she predicted the upcoming April labour force data, due to be released mid-May, would show the unemployment rate increased to 8.3% from its March rate of 5.2%. It does suggest that housing demand will weaken and we will see falls in house prices, Ms. Data said. But as we've seen in previous downturns, the annual average house price decline can be quite small. During the 1990s recession, employment rose to just over 10%, but house prices across Australia's capital cities also fell by about 6%. Economists have predicted anywhere between a 10 and 20% decline in house prices as a result of the pandemic, depending on how long the lockdown lasts and how the economic recovers once it opens. The economic outlook has improved over the past few weeks with our success of controlling the pandemic, but it's still going to be a tough time for many months ahead, Mr. Wiltshire said. He said even those in stable employment could see job losses in the future depending on whether there was a recurrence of the pandemic once restrictions were eased. Ms. Data said she expected people would continue social distancing long after the economy opened back up, and that in turn would change business models. Some businesses are going to go belly up despite the wages stimulus from the government and the RBA and the banking industry, she said. The reality is, if people feel nervous about their job, it's not conducive to making a big purchase like a home. And that is, well, a sensible point to end on, everyone. So what do you think? We seem to be getting a raft of mixed messages. But here, once again, they're predicting a 10 to 20% fall. Worst case, or some economists are. We'll have to see. The thing is, they're comparing it to the 1990s recession. We're in uncharted waters. Times are very different to the 1990s recession. The ability for people to work remotely is very different. That's going to have an impact on commercial property, I'd argue. The ability for people to order online, we'll have to see. That'll have an impact on retail property. All of that will flow through to other parts of the economy. So guys, what do you think? Are you concerned? Are you worried about missing out on getting to the housing market? Or are you just enjoying the bipolar behavior of the property bulls going up and down on a daily basis? As always, let me know your thoughts and opinions in the comments below. Thank you for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe to the channel. If you're a fan and you want to support us, there are a few ways you can. You can join the channel here on YouTube or on Patreon. You can support us via our affiliate links at Amazon or eBay or Independent Reserve and Kucoin. You can use Gold Pass from the Perth Mint, buy our merch from HeiseSays blog, or support us via PayPal. Thanks, guys. I'll see you next time.